Joy was a young woman in her 30s. She had dated her fiancé for years and had recently got engaged and planning their wedding. Her fiancé, Ken, was everything she could ask for: kind, attentive, and always there to support her. Although he came from a humble background and didn't have much money, he loved Joy deeply and provided for her in every way he could. Ken worked long hours at his job to make sure Joy had a comfortable life, even if it meant sacrificing his own needs. He believed that love, patience, and hard work were enough to build a good life together. But as much as Joy appreciated his efforts, she found herself yearning for more. She had always dreamed of a life filled with comfort and luxury. Joy had friends who seemed to live in a different world. They came from wealthy families, had high-paying jobs, or wealthy partners, which allowed them to indulge in luxuries Joy could only dream of: expensive clothes, jewelry, designer bags, lavish vacations. It was all just a phone call or a swipe of a credit card away for them. Every time she met up with her friends, she felt jealous. She'd listen to them talk about their shopping trips, fancy dinners, and weekend getaways, and each story deepened the pit of longing inside her. Why couldn't she have the same? She couldn't help but compare her life to theirs. She began to feel restless, dissatisfied, and even embarrassed by the modest life Ken could offer her. As their wedding day approached, Joy's inner conflict grew. While she loved Ken in her way, a part of her longed for the glamorous life her friends enjoyed. She started to wonder if love alone could make her happy. And then, one day, a new face appeared in her life. While scrolling through her social media, she received a friend request from a man named Victor. His profile exuded wealth. She didn't know him personally, but she had seen him around. He was well known in the city as a wealthy businessman. Victor was an older, married man, but his reputation as a generous man who was more than willing to shower women with gifts was no secret. At first, Joy hesitated, but the pictures of his luxurious lifestyle tempted her. Eventually, she accepted his friend request, thinking, "What's the harm in a little friendship?" Soon, Victor began to shower Joy with attention. He'd invite her to fancy dinners, send her expensive gifts, and treat her like a queen. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to understand her dreams of luxury. In Victor, Joy saw a doorway to the life she thought she deserved, and the thrill of it was intoxicating. She found herself spending more time with Victor, drawn by the lifestyle he offered, a lifestyle Ken couldn't dream of giving her. But this double life was risky, and deep down, Joy knew it. Weeks passed, and the wedding drew closer. Joy had been balancing her relationship with Ken and her secret escapades with Victor. It was dangerous, but she kept telling herself that no one would find out. She had it all under control, or so she thought. Then, just days before her wedding, Joy's world began to spiral out of control. She discovered she was pregnant. The news sent a shock through her. She should have been thrilled. She was about to marry Ken, and they would have a family together. But this wasn't a simple situation. Joy was filled with fear because she couldn't be certain who the father was. Was it Ken's child or Victor's? The weight of her secret became unbearable. The thought of marrying Ken with this hidden truth made her feel guilty, but she was terrified of what would happen if the child turned out to be Victor's. If Ken found out that she had been seeing someone else, her marriage would be ruined and her reputation shattered. She couldn't bear the thought of Ken discovering her betrayal and leaving her. The fear of that possibility gnawed at her until she couldn't take it anymore. Desperate and terrified, she made the difficult decision to end the pregnancy. She convinced herself it was for the best. Joy arranged to have an abortion. She told herself it was the only way to protect her future, her marriage, and Ken's trust. Once the pregnancy was terminated, she felt both relief and sorrow. She promised herself she would start fresh, that she'd be faithful to Ken, that she'd never let herself fall into such temptation again. After all, she still loved Ken and believed they could be happy together. Finally, their wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful ceremony, filled with smiles and laughter. To everyone around them, they were the perfect couple starting a wonderful life together. Joy tried her best to forget the past, determined to build a future with Ken and be the wife he deserved. Several months into their marriage, Joy and Ken began trying for a baby, but month after month there was no sign of pregnancy. At first, she thought it was just taking longer than expected. She went from doctor to doctor, trying to understand what was wrong, but each visit ended with disappointing news. The doctors couldn't offer much hope. Her chance of conceiving was slim. As more months went by, Joy grew anxious, and the weight of her secret began to feel unbearable. She couldn't help but wonder if the abortion had left her unable to conceive. The thought tormented her day and night, and regret became her constant companion. If only I had kept the baby, she thought bitterly. I would have a child by now, no matter who the father was. Her dreams of a perfect family with Ken now felt like a distant hope slipping through her fingers. Her frustration and sorrow soon became obvious to Ken. At first, he tried to be supportive, reassuring her that they could keep trying or even consider other options. But Joy's sadness turned into bitterness, and she started to withdraw, haunted by the choices she had made. One day, Ken overheard a conversation that hinted at Joy's past affair with Victor. Suspicion started to form in his mind, and after pressing her for the truth, Joy finally broke down and confessed everything: the affair, the pregnancy, and the abortion. Ken was shattered. He had loved her with all his heart, sacrificed for her, and she had betrayed him. She begged him to understand and to forgive. Ken couldn't look at her the same way. He tried, but every time he saw her, he was reminded of the lies and the future that had been stolen from him. The damage was too deep, the betrayal, the deception, the lost child. It was too much for him to bear. The revelation broke something between them that could never be repaired. Heartbroken and unable to forgive her deception, Ken made the painful decision to leave. He couldn't be with someone who had betrayed his trust so deeply. Their marriage ended, and Joy now lived with regret as her constant companion, realizing too late that her desire for more had cost her everything she had truly valued. She was left alone, carrying the weight of her choices, the luxury she had craved, the envy she had felt. All of it seemed empty now. She had lost Ken, the only man who had ever truly loved her. Her choices had led her down a path of loneliness and regret, a future without Ken, and potentially without the children she once dreamed of having. As time passed, Joy often thought back to the life she could have had with Ken. She imagined the children they might have raised, the quiet joys they might have shared. She had traded it all away for a fleeting moment of glamour, a choice that cost her everything in the end. And as she looked around at her empty, hollow life, she knew she had no one to blame but herself. In chasing a dream that was never truly hers, she had lost the love, trust, and family she could have had.